where our goal is to bring in people who do amazing things and are really put here to serve others, and they're doing just that. So super grateful today to have Maureen Michelle, Dr. Maureen Michelle, on with us. And yeah, thank you for being here. I'm a little discombobulated. Thank you.
Nikki, it's awesome to be here. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, and hopefully your audience can learn a thing or two about what we're talking about today.
This is a topic that so many people need to hear about. You know, I think that we're in, and just so briefly, Dr. Maureen, do you like Dr. Maureen or Dr. Maureen Michelle?
Dr. Maureen is totally fine. Yes.
So she works with families who have chronically ill children. And we are in a place right now where it seems to be more and more the norm. And so, so that's a whole different conversation, I think. But it's important to know that there are resources out there who are here to help, here to serve, here to give you love and guidance in a time that can be a real struggle. So thank you for being here. It's going to be awesome. Super excited.
Yeah. No, and that was kind of just a great introduction of like what I do, because I, have spent my life as a physician, and from the time I was a kid, wanted to be a doctor and wanted to be a mom, got to do both. And then when I was a pediatrician, my daughter, who was an infant at the time, was diagnosed with neuroblastoma, type of pediatric cancer. That rocked my world. And I went to a very dark place because I knew there were resources out there, but the stigma of seeking help was huge.
Yeah.
And I also didn't really want to ask for help because I felt like I was a failure if I was asking for help in this challenge that I was facing.
So can I want to interrupt you real quick, and I apologize, because all of this, I want to know, because you've had so much that you've been dealing with, and now what you're doing, what are you grateful for? Because we always like to start the show with gratitude, because it's so important, and gratitude can change the world. So what are you grateful for?
Yeah, so I am grateful for the challenges that I've experienced in my life. And I have to say that has taken me a long time to get to a place to be able to really be grateful for challenges. But I now understand that we are given a choice when we face a challenge, a choice of either having that challenge consume us or having that challenge be an opportunity to learn and grow. And I feel like I've been able to do that. It's hard to see in the moment, but as you get away from it, I think it's easier, and you can go into the next challenge understanding there's an end to this and it's all for good.
It is, and it gives you the ability to share with others and to serve others with your experiences.
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot here. I talk about it a lot because I think it's part of life. Whatever we've been given, we've got to learn how to deal with it. We've got to learn how to find our team to help us deal with it. We've got to learn more about ourselves to help us deal with it, right? So it's all about growth. It's all about becoming the person that we're supposed to be in this life. I truly believe that we've been given these amazing gifts, and sometimes our gifts aren't unwrapped without it being really, really hard.
Yes. Right.
So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that, because it is so integral to Taste Life Nutrition and to Taste Life Nutrition podcast, and to anybody who comes on, because everybody, I think most everybody to date has been an entrepreneur. Everybody to date is of service to others, and it really is just key to growth. So, real quick, I think my quick gratitude for the day is I ate a lot of really good fish last night. we had Valentine's
awesome.
Day, so we just went and we cooked it ourselves, but we had salmon and we had scallops and some of our favorite things, and
fantastic.
man, we had lots of butter and garlic. I've cut a lot of the saturated fats out of my own diet. Doesn't mean you have to cut out saturated fat. Good saturated fat is not bad, but for some people, it is. We can get into that at another point. But point is, I really splurged on a lot of butter and garlic, and it was delicious. So, that's what I'm doing for today, is just really good food. So good. And I get to leave today and go see my dad, so I'm super excited about that as well. So
that's awesome.
Okay, so since I interrupted you, I want you to get back to, your story, wherever you want to start and finish and all of the things, how you got to this point, and then the things that motivate you and excite you and keep you going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I was telling kind of the story of my journey to illustrate at the beginning of challenges that I've faced in my life that it's okay to ask for help. I didn't see that at the time and had a very hard time of asking for help. With time, as we got away from my daughter's diagnosis, she did well with surgery and chemotherapy and the whole works, and things got better. Well, fast forward to when she was 12, I got to be the physician to diagnose her with type 1 diabetes, which then I felt like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Mm-hmm. My whole world was coming crashing in yet again. But having that experience of going through this cancer journey with her as an infant, I knew I didn't want to go back to that dark place, and became very proactive about figuring out ways to help myself in addition to ways to help her. Mm-hmm. And I understood I wasn't going to be the best caregiver I could be if I didn't take care of myself. Mm-hmm. So really did a deep dive into podcasts and books and got a coach and really benefited from that. Years later, I had a leadership position at the hospital and wanted to become a better mentor to folks I was in charge of. So became a certified life coach to help me with mentorship. I quickly learned, though, that those tools that I learned through coaching were very helpful to the patients I was taking care of in clinic. So now I spend my time really helping families who have challenges with a child in their lives to be able to build resilience and lower their stress and overall become exceptional caregivers, because that's what we really want to be as a parent, is an exceptional caregiver for our kids.
So you are still a practicing physician, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you now bring this in as part of your practice, but then you also, and we'll get into this, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you're helping those in need outside of just your practice, right? You're working, right. You're doing some coaching, some group things to help people who need your expertise in resilience specifically, right?
Right.
And so on the topic of resilience, you talk about your 4 C's. Yeah, mm-hmm. Which I love. Yeah. And somebody else commented, when I was doing the posting on this and the sort of the pre-show prep kind of stuff. They're like, I love the 4 C's. That's brilliant. I was like, awesome. So let's talk about the 4 C's.
Yeah. So, first, like, it's the understanding that resilience really means you're able to bounce back from challenges. And just like what you said at the beginning, like, life is going to be full of challenges. And it is our job to learn through them and become a better person, whether it be we're stronger physically or stronger mentally or stronger emotionally from these challenges. And the more we practice being able to go through challenges, the more we're able to build resilience. Really, kind of the foundation of resilience is the understanding that it's mindset. And so the 4 C's go into developing a really good mindset to be able to bounce back from challenges. So the first C is consciousness, and this is knowing that our thoughts about circumstances that we encounter really can either help us or hurt us. And becoming aware of thoughts that our brain has and beliefs that our brain really thinks over and over and over again is super important first step to be able to understand our emotions, understand our actions, and really get the results we want in our lives. The second C is curiosity, and that goes to back to our thoughts. So when we get good at recognizing thoughts that are going through our brain, we can do a deeper dive into them and start questioning them and becoming curious as to where did that thought come from? Do I really believe this? Is there something else that I can think of instead? The last 2 C's are courage and commitment. And I kind of lump those two together because anytime you're trying to make a change in the way that you're thinking about something, you first need courage to say, I need to take this first step to try to rethink and reframe how I'm thinking about something. And that takes courage to have that first step. Once you take the first step, then it's committing to continuing the steps, because you're not going to be perfect at it right off the bat. You're going to stumble and make mistakes and maybe go back to your old way of thinking. And that's okay. That's how, again, that we get data to learn how to do things better. But it's having that commitment that, no, I really want to change, that allows you to continue to work on building resilience.
I think it's so important because it goes back to whether we're looking at, diet or lifestyle or the stuff that you're dealing with, it's always a practice. And
always.
And we have there are so many ways, so many places we can go here, but my mind goes to we don't stick to it, or we mess up, or we fall off the wagon, or whatever it is, and then we go into beating ourselves up and the negative self-talk and all of these things that can happen. When I love the creating the awareness, the knowing, the consciousness, because when you have that, you can fall off the wagon, or you can make a mistake, you can do whatever, and you can say, all right, I see it, I hear it, I know it, I got it, we're going to try again. And that's really right. All it is.
Yeah.
My other love about what you say, this is a word that comes up for me more and more, is curiosity. It's so important to remain curious and ask the questions. And in my world, I'm looking for the root cause of dysfunction, right? We're trying to find out what it is. And if we're not curious, we won't continue to ask why. And in very simple terms, it's always asking why. And I think it's that case in pretty much any situation that we're in. Always ask why, and don't say,
Yeah.
okay, well, then that's it. That's all there is to it. Or this is now me, or
Right.
whatever it is, it's ask why and remain curious. And I think that in order to grow in life, we have to remain curious. And I see this a lot and I'm gonna, just in the medical world, but in lots of worlds where, and I think anybody can fall prey to it, but you get stuck in where you are and you stop asking questions because this is where I am, this is what I'm good at, and this is all I'm going to do. And you stop asking questions and you stop the curiosity. Yes. And we have to, sorry, I don't mean to be repetitive. I just think it's such an important word. And it came up for me. I know we still have a whole year until next year. My word of the year this year is trust. And I just went, oh, next year might be curiosity.
That's awesome.
Anyway.
That's awesome. Yeah. But you're 100% correct. Like, all of this applies to so many different things in our lives. Like you said, whether it be a challenge that we have with our child, or a financial difficulty, or a health issue in ourselves, or sticking to an exercise or nutrition routine that we want to stick to. It applies to everything. Mm-hmm. And folks often ask, like, well, you talk about this, but you make it sound so easy that, be conscious of your thoughts. Well, we have thoughts that fly through our brain at lightning speed. Yeah. And it's really practicing the skill of being conscious about it that we get better and faster at doing it. Same with curiosity. Mm-hmm. We have to practice it to get better and be able to see deeper questions or deeper understanding of something. And so I always tell people, you need to start the practice by just having a blank sheet of paper and a pen. Mm-hmm. And giving yourself some time to just download some thoughts onto a sheet of paper. That can allow you to really start being aware of things that go on in your mind. And if you don't give yourself that space, you're never going to get better and quicker at it. But when you write it down, you become distant from it, and it allows you to be a little bit more curious because there's less judgment. Mm-hmm. When you're seeing that thought on paper, you become more objective about it.
Yeah. One of, and I know everybody hears this and we know this, but it really is a great practice, is that practice of journaling. So, and being intentional about it, right? So gratitude, right? Gratitude journaling, and then just writing and letting it come out. I am not the best at this. I have my morning practice that I do. Sometimes it includes journaling and sometimes it doesn't. But when it does, and I just write to write, because I'm not a writer, but I'm writing just to write, things will start to come out that you can then be curious about. You can evaluate. You can go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Didn't know that until I put it down on paper. So I think it really is, no matter where you are, just having that journal. I like to carry like small little notebooks with me in my bag. Yeah. And that can sometimes be helpful. I think everybody's got to find their thing that helps them to do it. I always think that a good morning practice or a bedtime practice is a smart thing to do. But anyway, you gotta find your thing. Yeah.
I love how you started the show with gratitude, and we're now kind of talking about journaling. And as a physician who believes in science and research, I just want to let your audience know and kind of foot stomp the gratitude journaling piece. There is a lot of data to show that if you write down things you are grateful for, that it really does remarkable things to your brain from a chemical standpoint and creates happier people. And just to highlight and use you as an example, you were very specific in what you were grateful for today.
Yeah.
And that is very important when folks are participating in a gratitude journaling practice. It's not to say, I'm grateful for my kids. I am grateful for my kids, but being specific, like I'm grateful for the phone conversation I had with my daughter yesterday, is much better when you're participating in a journaling practice.
You know, so many of the things that we in our past, and I'd say in a very short history past is what I mean, that we see as woo-woo or woo is actually backed by a lot of data and or is very traditional over millennia, however long it's been. Yes. And we're like, well, I don't understand it, so it can't be real. And it's interesting. There's so much data. So it's the gratitude journaling, the meditation, the prayer, the sitting quiet, the grounding, walking on the grass, and these things that seem so simple but can be so beautifully therapeutic.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And there's also something about listening to bird sounds. If you listen to the sounds of birds for 2 minutes every day, whether it be real birds or on an app on a phone, or that also changes brain chemistry to make happier people.
I love that. I've been listening to an app, I can't remember what it's called right now. I just found it, but it's the brain waves, so it's the music and the brain frequencies and the theta and the beta and the solfeggio frequencies and all of these cool things. And interesting how you can pinpoint these different brain waves and different sounds that help with sleep and relaxation and focus and all of these things. It's really, really just fascinating stuff.
Yes.
Cool stuff.
Yes.
I love the birds, though. I'm going to get a bird app. Yeah. I think that's really cool. Or just go outside.
It's so
outside
easy. Yeah, just if you have Spotify, look up bird songs and play it for 2 minutes every day, and that can make you a happier person.
I love that. How old is your daughter now?
She's 23, actually.
Okay.
And, this is another thing, like, I said at the beginning, like, I'm grateful for the challenges that we have. And yesterday, for Valentine's Day, I wrote a letter to diabetes to say why I love diabetes. Aww. And doing something like that is so powerful because it allowed me the opportunity to look back and see how much her medical challenge has taught us about responsibility and organization and just deep love for each other in the family. Mm-hmm. And there's, as much as I dislike type 1 diabetes, I wouldn't want my life to be any different. And she would say the same thing. Yeah. She has taken that challenge and is now an MD, PhD student studying autoimmune diseases. And it's incredible to watch her kind of just grow into this incredible individual who has realized that you don't need to be inhibited when challenges come into your life.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. A couple of questions. I talk a lot about advocating for ourselves, and how important it is to be your own advocate, be your own best friend. Just have the information and seek information and keep asking questions. And if you don't get what you want or what you think you need, just keep going. So I say that because I think that I believe that the healthcare system can be difficult for some people, a lot of people, to navigate. And then when you're in the throes of the fear of your child being ill and what's going to happen and what could happen and the overwhelm and all of the things that can go along with that. And then on top of that, you've got to learn, you've got to educate yourself, you've got to educate your kiddo, you got to take care of your kiddo or kiddos, right? All of these things that are going to go into this situation. How do you help people navigate that and advocate for themselves and advocate for their children?
Yeah. So first I would say is when we say the word advocate, immediately what comes to mind is an argument. And I don't want people to think that advocating means arguing.
No.
And that is a thought that creates this like armor, and that we need to go in like fighting, and it creates this mood of the visit that is very off-putting. So understanding that advocacy is just a conversation is step number one. Step number two is understanding that medical professionals are humans just like you and me. And that means that they're going to have good days, they're going to have bad days. They're going to be right some of the time, they're going to be wrong some of the time. But going into it knowing that they're human also creates a platform of trust that because it becomes dangerous when someone approaches a medical professional as if they are up on a pedestal. It doesn't allow the courage to say or ask questions that the patient needs to know about. So do not think of medical professionals as individuals who should be on a pedestal. They may be experts in what they're talking about, but they're still human. The next thing I tell and teach is go into an appointment prepared. And that means taking a few minutes to jot down on a sheet of paper topics or questions that you want to make sure are covered during that appointment. That piece of paper serves you in a couple of different ways. One is it makes sure that your goal of the appointment was met, but it also serves you in case you start feeling anxious or overwhelmed or not courageous or belittled or whatever your emotion is, that you can refer back to your paper and not become flustered and still allow yourself to have that courage to ask the question because it's there and you can just read it off on the paper. But the other important thing about advocating is always approach it as if you know someone is never 100% wrong. So it becomes a game. And what I mean by that is if a doctor is telling you something that you disagree with, if you go into it thinking, you know what, that this doctor, he's not 100% wrong. Where is he correct? What are the little nuggets that I can pull out of this conversation that are the things that are correct? And that allows you to again go back to that curiosity to really start figuring out what tips or what little tidbits that are being offered that you can use or ask more questions about or get more curious about.
Yeah. Sorry, I was reading some of my notes. And it's funny because all of my questions you just answered. That's awesome. There is this interesting scenario where I think that there is the putting practitioners up on a pedestal. There's a lot of school behind what they know, right? There's a lot of knowledge there, which is a beautiful thing, right? Everybody has their expertise. This is why I don't do my own accounting, because I suck at it. Right? So yeah, I love those tips, because going and understanding, I think this is with anybody in any kind of conversation, going and understanding you don't know this other person's history, background, what they're dealing with in their personal life, right? Or what they just dealt with another patient. And going and knowing it's a conversation, there are a lot of things that you don't know, but just going in and asking questions. Yeah. And trying to get answers and being curious. Yeah.
And it will not go well 100% of the time.
Sure.
And that is okay, but it's if it doesn't go well, it means allowing yourself to be forgiven, and treat yourself with compassion. Don't judge yourself and let the negative self-talk start, and then do it differently next time. And so I've had people say like, oh, you, I'm sure, are a great advocate for your daughter because you're a doctor and you know how to advocate. And I remind them that there have been times when I have not done it well. And, when my daughter was first diagnosed with diabetes and we went to the emergency room, the ER doc comes in, takes a history, and then says to me, well, we need to get an x-ray. And I said, an x-ray? And he said, well, yeah, we need to make sure that it's not pneumonia. And I had been practicing pediatrics for many years before that, and said to him, like, said in my mind, well, I didn't say anything about cough. I didn't say anything about fever. I didn't say anything about difficulty breathing. Like, she doesn't have pneumonia. And so I said to him, are you sure we need this? And he's like, yeah, it's probably going to be negative, but we need it just to make sure it's not pneumonia. Well, also in my mind, I knew how much radiation exposure she had as an infant because of her diagnosis of cancer in the past, and really wanted to save her from having this unnecessary exposure, albeit exceedingly small, but this unnecessary exposure to radiation. But at the same time in my mind was, I am going to see this guy again because I work in the same hospital that he does, and so I'm just going to let it go and let her have the x-ray and please him. Now, so she got the x-ray, lo and behold, she did not have pneumonia, but I beat myself up about that for a while, and but realized, you know what, there's a lot to learn from that I understood more about how important it is that we need to serve ourselves first rather than please other people. And there's a way to do it without being confrontational. I could have in the moment said to him, I get it that you want her to have an x-ray. I don't know if an x-ray is really necessary. Do you mind grabbing your colleague to be a tiebreaker? And that could have been an easy way to confront the situation without having any sort of argument or confrontation about it. It didn't need to be negative. It could have remained positive. But learning from that and doing a better job the next time is the real value in it.
Yeah. Did you know each other?
I didn't know him prior to that.
Okay.
I saw him after that
Sure.
many times.
Yeah.
And I knew that that was going to happen because the hospital isn't that big. So but I don't know if it would have been easier or harder had we known each other beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah, just curious, and I don't know why, just, I think sometimes, when you know each other, what would it have been? But interesting, and taking it and not beating yourself up, right? Again, going after, being aware of the negative self-talk, knowing that it's over, it's done, it's in the past, and learn and grow from it and move on. So we get stuck in the what ifs, and it can really be harmful.
Yeah, and we also get stuck with this thought that failure is bad. And you know what? Like, failure's not bad. Like, failure is just data. Just like winning is data. And winning gives us data to do the same thing again. Failure is data to give us data on, hey, maybe you should do it differently next time. But it's not bad. And that's where we get hung up and stuck, is when we focus on how bad it is when we fail.
Yeah. Agreed. We can't grow without failure. We can call it failure, or we can call it growth. Take your pick.
Or data.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is what it is, right? So with all of this comes a lot of overwhelm, right? You've talked about this a little bit already. I can only imagine, with my own health struggles is, I don't have children, so I don't have that. I just know from my own experience, there's still my own overwhelm, and I can't imagine the overwhelm when it's your child. So, you have in here that there are different thoughts that can contribute to overwhelm, and I believe I can only assume that if you understand what these are, then you can start to mitigate the overwhelm.
Right.
Yeah. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So overwhelm is one of those things that is, we can feel it in our body when we're in overwhelm.
Big time.
But it does keep us stuck, like we're not moving forward when we're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And it's coming from thoughts that are in our brain about all of these kind of what ifs, and anticipating things about the future that are creating this state of being overwhelmed. And there's a couple of different thoughts that come when parents are taking care of chronically ill kids, or when people are just overwhelmed. Two important ones to understand is something called all or nothing thoughts. So the thought of, well, if I can't even imagine taking my kid to this specialist and this specialist and this specialist, so I can't do any of it. And the solution to that is bringing yourself back to the present and taking it just one step at a time. Another big thought that I kind of alluded to with my story of the ER doc is people-pleasing thoughts. that gets us overwhelmed all the time, because we sit there and think like, what if she's going to get mad at me? Or what if I don't do a good job and agree with the plan that they're talking about? And so pleasing other people gets us into this kind of state of overwhelm too.
Yeah.
But the solution, anytime you catch yourself in overwhelm, it's taking a deep breath and realizing you're focusing on the future, but focus yourself back in the past, back in the present, so that you're taking it just one step at a time.
Yeah, if you're thinking too far ahead, I mean, that certainly will create overwhelm. I have to do that just in my daily work, right? Like,
yeah.
Stop thinking about all of the things and let's focus
right.
on one thing right now.
One thing.
Yeah.
And, folks have said to me, like, I bet you didn't get overwhelmed when your daughter had neuroblastoma or when your daughter got diagnosed with diabetes, because you knew what that diagnosis meant in both of those scenarios. So it's the being naive that creates this overwhelm. And I said, no. Like, it's not being naive that creates the overwhelm. For me, it was all the other patients I had taken care of in the past with the same diagnosis as my daughter. Those patients was where my brain went to. Yeah. And I thought about all the what ifs of that were going to happen as a result of her diagnosis. So I tell folks, it wasn't easier to be a doctor and be a mom of a kid with health challenges. It wasn't harder either. It was just different.
Yeah.
Because my brain, the thoughts my brain generated, were different than somebody who didn't have medical knowledge.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, it's just different.
Yeah, of course. So at this point, is your focus type 1 diabetes, or is it anyone with chronic health conditions?
Yeah, so both. I find that more moms of type 1 diabetic kids find me just because that's the diagnosis that my daughter had. Through my medical practice, I've been involved with a lot of different chronic illnesses, anywhere from asthma all the way through more complicated diseases like different immunodeficiencies or genetic diseases, etc.
Sure.
So I help any of those families.
Cool. That's what I thought, but I know that you have. And is this a group, or is this just what's in your website? It's the Type 1 Diabetic Warriors, or is that just how you describe them?
Yeah, that's how.
Sorry, phone's ringing.
Oh no, that's okay.
Probably won't answer that one.
So T1D warriors are typically a common way to refer to a type 1 diabetic child.
I love it. So good. So you have what I believe is a guide that you put together. Is this your freebie? Or you give away the little hacks?
The parenting hacks is a freebie.
Okay.
I also have on Amazon a book that I published that is called Reclaiming Life, a guide for parents of chronically ill children. And I have to tell you, this goes back to what we were talking about with journaling, that this book started as a project to historically document stories that happened to my daughter, because my kids were always asking, can you tell us the time when Kylie did this, or tell us the time when you diagnosed diabetes? Well, as I was writing, realized that our stories can help other families to make life a little bit easier. And so the book kind of morphed and became stories of my daughter, but also stories of patients that I took care of. Well, when I wrote the last sentence of the book, I closed my laptop and just started crying.
Aww.
Because I realized by describing all of these experiences and reliving them in detail for the reader, that I did a lot of my own emotional healing through the process, and needed that book to be written and out there in the world, not just for others, but for myself. And now really believe in the power of journaling because I've seen the impact of it in my own life.
So fascinating. You know, last week we had on a woman who coaches people through writing their books that tend to be therapeutic writings.
Yes.
Right? And I was like, oh, that's super cool, and so cool that they're so close together. But she's also, which I find fascinating, she will read somebody's work and says, she'll tell them, you're not ready for this yet. You know,
Yes.
you've got to
Yes.
do the healing in whatever form or fashion before you can really make the book what it is supposed to be, right? So I love that. I think that's amazing.
And it's super interesting because I was not expecting that, because I thought, oh, I'm good. Like, I had, by the point in time that I wrote the book, like, I had done a lot of work on myself and thought, you know, I'm healed.
Yeah.
But it's the realization that sometimes we pack down our emotions and put them away into this, like, box that we think is never going to get opened. And, you know, lo and behold, it could get opened in ways and times when we don't expect it.
Yeah.
But really processing emotions allows us not to put those emotions, those times in that box, that it allows it to be really part of us and really healed as part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Quick question for you, more out of curiosity, because I know that you diagnosed your daughter when y'all took her into the emergency department. Was it at that point that she was diagnosed? How did it happen? What were the events?
Story behind it, yeah. So she at the time was 12 and was attending school for the arts. She was very big into ballet dancing, and they texted me from school and said, "Mom, something's wrong with me. I have peed 12 times at school today. Bring home whatever you need to fix me." And I thought, well, she must have a urinary tract infection because we've already done the cancer thing. There's no way she could have two bad things that happened to her. So went to her school to diagnose her urinary tract infection, so that we didn't have to go all the way home because our school was closer to the hospital. When I went to her school, I brought a urine cup that I had taken from the peds clinic along with a urine dipstick. And she met me at the front and went into the little bathroom and peed in the cup and called me in afterwards. And in that school bathroom, I dipped her urine, and immediately the glucose in her urine went super dark. And there's only one thing that does that, and that's type 1 diabetes. And so in this tiny bathroom, like, I start to cry, and she's looking at me like, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, you have diabetes." And now she's crying, and she doesn't even know, like, she has no idea what that means or why I'm crying. And she says, "Well, am I going to die?" And I said, "No, sweetheart, you're not going to die." And she's like, "Well, why are you crying?" And I said, "Because I don't want you to have diabetes." And that kind of started the whole thing. And, you know, when we drove to the emergency room, in the car ride there, she said, "Mom, I want to tell you 2 things." And I said, "Okay, what are those 2 things?" And she said, "Well, when we go to the emergency room, if I want them to tell you what they're going to tell me, and I want you then to tell me what they said." And I said, "Okay, but sweetie, there's not going to be any surprises. Like, we're going to go there and they're going to say, you have type 1 diabetes." I said, "If they tell you anything else, that means your mom is a moron. And I really don't think your mom's a moron. So there aren't going to be any surprises. But what is the second thing that you want to make sure?" And she said, "Well, I don't want anyone rushing around in the emergency room." And I said, "Well, rushing around? Like, what does that have to do with anything?" And she said, "Mom, every time I watch a TV show and they rush around, the person dies. So if they rush, I'm going to think that I'm dying." And I said, "Sweetie, you're not dying. That it'll be fine." But you know, that conversation stuck with me so strongly and made me a better physician. And the reason I say that is it gave me incredible perspective on what goes on in the mind of someone who's young, or someone who's naive, or someone who's scared. And understanding perspective sometimes is so helpful in everything that we do.
I'm so glad I asked you to tell that story. So with that, I would love to hear any of your client/patient stories that you want to share. You know, your successes, or you know, whatever you've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, I'll tell you one, because I think it's super important. Especially because we were talking about advocating. And, you know, one of the things that I often teach is not just about advocacy, but is about organization, because getting organized in our physical space, organized in our minds, is so critical to achieving things that we want out of life, or out of healthcare, or whatever our goal is. I had a patient who had a diagnosis, and I couldn't figure out what that diagnosis was. She was developmentally delayed, had seizures, had some features that it made her jaw smaller and more difficulty breathing. And I knew it was all related to something, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And the mom and I worked with NIH to get an appointment for the child at NIH, so that they could see if there was some disease that was being studied that was newer, that she would fit into. Well, she had seen lots and lots of different specialists. So the mom comes in with a medical record, because the mom kept copies of all of these reports, and it was huge and super disorganized. So the mom and I sat in my office and organized all of these. I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of pages of medical records into binders of neurology, orthopedics, infectious disease, etc. And the child went to NIH, and the mom, like, super organized, had all of these binders. And I tell you, you know, that was, oh goodness, over 10 years ago. And the mom just texted me and gave me another picture of those binders and said what a blessing they have been in her life, that throughout her child's medical journey, and they ended up finding what genetic reason that she had for all of her medical problems. But she says those binders have just been huge on trying to advocate for her kid, because the being organized in all of the medical stuff is so important. Huge. And you know, one of the things that I want to highlight too is in caring for her, I was frustrated as a doctor on not being able to tell the mom the specific diagnosis. The mom too was frustrated on not having a specific diagnosis. But I tell you, the best part about the physician-patient relationship is trust and mutual respect and honesty. And I was able to tell her, look, I don't know exactly what's wrong with your daughter, but these are the reasons why I want you to bring her back to me. And if this happens, you need to let me know. So sometimes in medicine, we don't know the answer right away. It takes time to evolve and science to kind of catch up to what's going on. But make sure that that's part of the advocacy conversation with your healthcare provider on, okay, you don't know what's wrong, but tell me when to come back or what I should pay attention to, because all of that data helps down the line with finding out what's wrong.
It's so fascinating. I've had multiple clients who've had a significant medical history, and I'm amazed when they bring me their binders, and their binders have their tabs and all these. I'm like, this is awesome stuff.
Yeah.
So good. It's so good. But it's true. Obviously, I'm not in medicine, but I do help people to learn and to understand. And I can't, and I don't diagnose, but I can dig and look for, you know, dysfunction and things that can be repaired. So sometimes we don't have answers, but we can address things, and we can talk through things, and we can give guidance. And even if we still need to refer to someone else, right, or whatever the case may be for that certain situation, you still I always see myself as their partner in their health journey, right? Yeah. Whatever it is, I'm here to guide you the best that I can, the best that I know how. And then if we need to build your team, that's what we do. But I'm going to help you through the part that I know I can help you with, right? And so, it's having your partner, having your team. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you know, in the example that I gave about like this mom having all of these documents, well, it goes back to what we were talking about with being overwhelmed. Like that disorganization of all of that stuff, like she looked at it and didn't even know where to start, was like incredibly overwhelmed. So but it's through that process, it was teaching her about overwhelm, and that, you know, sometimes it looks like a daunting task, and it goes back to that all or nothing thought, right? Yeah. Is that I need it all organized right now, or else I'm not going to do any of it. And But it's the realization, you know what, I'm overwhelmed, but I just need to take one step forward, and doing a little bit of organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start creating momentum for that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of mind work that went into her success for her child.
Yeah, that's amazing. So talk to me a little bit about the different programs that you have. I know you've got private, you've got groups, you've got workshops. Let's talk about those.
Yeah, so my favorite is working one-on-one with people, because it really allows them the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm really struggling because I want to do something different in my career, but I'm terrified to ask for help with my kid. Or I think something's going to go wrong with my kid, so I've ignored the other siblings, but I want to build a better relationship with my other children or my spouse. And so it's so fun to be able to work through one specific problem and realize that, and have the individual realize that they have the power to be able to find a solution. It's just having somebody guide them through those curiosity, deep questions, so that they can do the work and find the solution. So it's in group coaching, we work through kind of 3 different peers on advocacy, we work on organization, and we work on relationships and building a good support system. But, you know, all of this through coaching. Coaching is the opportunity to have somebody who is asking hard questions to you and is telling you things, but in a different way than a friend or a family member. Because sometimes a friend or a family member is not going to tell you the truth because they don't want to upset you,
right,
or they don't want to ask you questions because they don't want to upset you. A coach's job is a little bit different, and it's to kind of hold a mirror up to the individual to help them and guide them without giving them advice or answers, because that's not what people need. People need to understand that they have the tools to do it for themselves. They just need guidance on how to make that happen.
I love that. I so wholeheartedly agree, because I think we can find ourselves in a position where we feel like we've lost all the power. And I think that's the part of, I call myself a guide. You're a guide. Anybody who is a guide through a situation is to show you have the power. You just got to know it, and you got to know. Sometimes we don't know how to grab it or how to find it, right? So it's asking the hard questions. It's looking outside of the box. I know for me too. I have a hard time looking outside of the box of things that I don't know, and I say this a lot, but it's so true. Is somebody might say just one thing, and this whole other box just opened. I'm like, beautiful. I love it.
Yes.
So giving people their power back, or maybe showing them that they never lost it, you know?
Right. Yeah. And it's, you know, I have some folks that come and think that I'm going to give them the answers, and I'm going to tell them exactly what to do to solve their problem. And that is not the case, because of exactly what you just said, that what worked for me personally may not work for the individual. And it's understanding that there's so much opportunity in the world. We just need to use our brain as a tool to help us rather than this thing that is hindering us because it thinks we need to be protected all of the time.
Yeah, agreed. Well, we are out of time, believe it or not. It always goes so fast, doesn't it?
It does. This has been so fun.
It has been fun. I'm super grateful that you joined me. I'm grateful for what you're doing. I know that there are a lot of people who can and will and have benefited from what you have to offer and what you have to share. So thank you for, I mean, a lot of what you do is being vulnerable
Right.
yourself and with what you've struggled with and have come through and can show others that they can get through it as well. So good for you, and thank you.
No, thank you. This has been awesome, and I truly hope somebody, even if it's just one person, got one thing out of what we talked about today. And being vulnerable is absolutely a powerful thing that can continue to teach our children how to be outstanding individuals.
Yes, agreed. So agree. People need to know where to find you. How can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is MaureenMichelleMD.com, and Michelle is spelt with one L, just to confuse people.
Right. I love that. I love it. So that's you are on the social media, all the places, yeah?
Yep, so on all the places I'm Maureen Michelle MD.
Perfect. Good branding. I love it. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We are here every Thursday live on KUHSdenver.com. And, of course, you can find me. I'm Taste Life Nutrition in all of the places. So the website, the social media, you can go to my website. You can always find the podcasts, the shows. Go to YouTube, find everything there as well. But you can find a free assessment on my website that you can fill out. If you have whatever that you're struggling with, I'm going to reach out to you. We're going to chat about it. If I can help you, great. If I know somebody amazing who can help you, that's great too. So that's my goal, is to be a resource and to the best of my ability. So then of course we have Soulful Conception. Soulful Conception is preparing for pregnancy, getting ready prior to getting pregnant, optimizing your health, reducing symptoms, because your health today can impact generations of kiddos ahead, generations of family members ahead. And so it's really important just to take a little bit of time to prepare. So that's what I love. And then all of the other things so that I love to nerd out about. But anyway, feel free to reach out. Thank you again, Dr. Maureen. So grateful that you joined us.
Thank you.
If you want to stay with me just 1 second while I shut everything off. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.